thank you so much and welcome to the New South Wales Parliament House. It's really wonderful to see all of you here, and this is your house, this is your Parliament, and it's a wonderful occasion to have it filled with people from the Chinese Australian community, many of whom live in St George. And I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and some of the VIPs who are here with us, obviously Yin Kao, Guan Wei, Fang Zhu, Dr. Han, as well as Dr. He, Councillor Ben Wang, who's my good friend and a councillor on Georges River Council, and Jenny, who's just an absolute dynamo, always invites me to these things and cares passionately about the community in St George and in New South Wales, and what a privilege to be amongst all of you. I love this event, and I'm particularly enamoured with this book and the research that goes in behind it. I think it's so important for Australia's cultural history that we hold on to these stories and that they're committed to print. And the reason for that is multifaceted. The first one is that we can understand what makes our multicultural immigrant society the envy of the world. Because in Australia, you can be from any race or religion or background or cultural leaning. You can be from anywhere on the planet and live amongst a community with someone from a different race or religion next door and live in peace and harmony and prosperity together. And there's not many countries around the world that are like that. We're one of the few where it actually works. We all like each other. We respect each other. We live in a multicultural community. It's all become second nature to me because I'm 43 years old, 43. And my entire life has been lived with people from Chinese backgrounds and Greek backgrounds and Italian backgrounds and Irish backgrounds. So it's not particularly strange to me to have so many people from such a vastly different community background. But when I go to my children's school and they bring kids home from their kindergarten class or their year 6 class, or my oldest one's in year 8, and they're from their cultural heritage is from everywhere on the entire planet, it just fills me with joy. And it's the best example that Australia is producing something wonderful in this country, a really wonderful, functioning, multicultural country where we welcome immigrants from around the world and we encourage them to call Australia home. I was perusing the latest edition of Too Blue to Be True, Volume 3, and in particular the work of Hong Jilin. And it's an amazing story. She came to Australia at the end of the 1980s and lived in a share house with 3 women and I think 5 men in a share house with a mattress that they found on the side of the street. And at one night an intruder came through the door, and she still has visions of that intruder leaping out of the bedroom as one of her flatmates screamed. Anyway, fast forward through a car accident and then working in a factory, that she gets laid off from the factory, gets sacked. And rather than approaching what would be a pretty troubling personal circumstance, she writes that it was the impetus that she needed to go to university and get an engineering degree from the University of Technology and get completely proficient in English. And so fast forward a few years, and she writes, and I hope she doesn't mind me plagiarising this, "The Australian workplace promotes an easygoing culture. I like the atmosphere where people could freely call the boss by his or her first name. In the early days, engineering positions were filled by male staff, and there were few female engineers in the company, let alone female engineers from mainland China like me." I mean, what an amazing country. That within a few years, having come to this nation, starting her life over again, she could be an engineer working in a company and be one of the few female engineers within that organisation. I just think this is such an important tone to what we've created in Australia today. And economists and politicians need to study it because we need to know what's working. It didn't just happen by accident. It's almost innumerable incidents of people coming together, working hard, calling Australia home, and building a professional life and a family right here in Australia. The second reason why it's so crucial is because in 50 years or 75 years or 100 years' time, everybody here will have a fourth generation Australian. And I guarantee you that the young generation in 100 years' time will ask their parents and potentially their grandparents, where did our Australian story begin? How did it start? And I can tell you that my family's been in Australia for about 175 years, a long time. And those stories are lost to us. We don't know the circumstances in which our forebears came to Australia. But the people that contributed to this book and its predecessor and the first edition will know. And you are passing on a wonderful gift to people who live in your family, people that you'll never meet. They will be able to understand why you started your Australian journey. And I promise you, it's one of the most precious gifts you could give to another person. So thank you for the contribution. Welcome to the New South Wales Parliament House. And it's just such a privilege being the member for Cogra and representing this dynamic, diverse, exciting, multicultural community right here in the electorate of Cogra in the community of St George. Thanks again.